And how is it going, everybody? Welcome back Welcome to the Podcats. We hope you're all having a great day, maybe recovering from last night's crazy game between the Panthers and the Oilers. I know we have. I am Jake Gibson, joined alongside my friend and co-host Alex Krutchik. And Alex, it's been a while since our last episode. A lot, and I mean a lot, has happened, not just for the Panthers, but for hockey itself.
Yeah, it's been an exciting one. We'll get into it further, but the Four Nations Faceoff was, by all accounts, a great success.
Mm-hmm.
These tournaments only go as far as the players will go for it, and they really went for it. They really played their hearts out, and we'll get more into it later. But yeah, just a fantastic last month for hockey.
It's been a very long time since the NHL has been openly adamant about having their star players competing for their countries on the national scale like this. And it proved to be one of the greatest in-season tournaments, maybe not just in hockey, but in all of sports we have seen in a very, very long time. For being a unique endeavor by the NHL, I think it was handled very well. You had two venues pretty close to each other in both Montreal and Boston. You had quite literally four nations: Canada, Finland, Sweden, Team USA. And it produced something I don't think we've seen the NHL All-Star Game produce in years, maybe ever, with the amount of effort they put into that.
No, definitely. Because I remember, in the All-Star game, it's a story if someone gets sent to the penalty box. Like, guys aren't really playing defense with the body. They'll play defense with the stick a little bit, but they don't really use their bodies much. Hardly ever a penalty committed by anyone. And that's a result of not playing physical, not playing with a whole lot of effort.
Yes.
These games that aren't even a full 60 minutes will often end like 8-6 or something like that. With this, you could tell the effort was there, not just from the final scores. Those final scores were normal hockey scores, and then you saw fights. You saw the Sam Bennett and Brady Tkachuk fight that they were texting about before the game. There were other fights that were going on between the four countries. Just the fact they even cared enough to drop the gloves at any point is crazy, because you would never see that in the All-Star game. There would be no reason to. But these guys cared so much that they were laying big hits. They were fighting. They were playing real defense. They were using their bodies. Scores were ending. These games were ending with low scores. It was exciting. And like I said before, these events only go as far as the players are willing to try for them. And it was very obvious from the first game that they were going to try.
And the thing that also escalated the Four Nations face-off was the fact that everybody was talking about it. And I mean everybody, not even just hockey fans, hockey casuals, hockey experts, anyone who kind of knew the sport tuned in to USA versus Canada Part 1 and then Part 2. You had, because while the Four Nations was going on, we weren't witnessing the NBA All-Star weekend over in I believe it was in San Francisco, the Warriors joint. But there was like barely any coverage from the NBA All-Star game, to the point where you had the NBA on TNT crew even talking about how it's become redundant. There's not enough effort put into the NBA All-Star game. And then you look at, the NHL and what they've produced and how everyone is tuning in. The players care. You even have political tensions thrown into it with all the boos with the national anthems. Obviously, it's not, don't want to get too into the political side, but it was definitely also sparked interest in a national level, both for the entire country of Canada and the entire country of the United States. This all culminated into one of the greatest events that the NHL has produced in a long time, and one of, I believe, the most viewed games nationally, being the final between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, it was the highest viewed non-Stanley Cup hockey game since 2019, if I have that correct.
Yeah, I want to say that's correct. Unfortunately for us, it didn't go our way, because, we are Americans. We're rooting for Team USA, not just because they had Matthew Tkachuk, but it was our country, and it didn't go exactly as planned. Once again, Canada gets us in overtime. This time it was not Sid the Kid. It was Connor McDavid who gets the job done. And obviously the ending to it was not what we wanted to see, but I think there definitely is no denying that, at least to me, this needs to be the future of this sort of week in between the NHL season. The All-Star game, I think, could be a thing in the past, and then you can do something similar to the Four Nations every year, maybe even every other year. Maybe even introduce other teams such as, Germany, Switzerland, the Czech Republic. Obviously, Russia has the talent, but obviously with political tensions, maybe that won't be an option. But I don't know about you, Alex, but I want to see this every year, and hopefully it wouldn't. The players wouldn't stop caring after you do it a few times. But I want to see this every year now. I do.
Yeah, I agree. This was awesome. It won't be something that we see next year, if I had to guess, just because you have the Olympics in February,
Right.
and it will, it will feature NHL players, thank God.
Which is great.
Which was what was so great about this past tournament of the Four Nations, was that it was finally best on best. And then in 2027, you might see it again. 2028, then you have the World Cup of Hockey. So I hope it's something that we see in 2027. Luckily, we won't see the Four Nations next year, most likely, but at least we will see another best on best tournament.
Yeah, 2028 and 2032 are the next World Cups of hockey that the NHL is going to host. You do have the Olympics in 2026 and 2030. And then after that, we'll see what happens. And like I said, you could maybe open it up to other nations. Obviously, Russia, with the way the world is right now, that might not happen. But you know what they could do? I believe in the Olympics, Russian athletes can't compete for Russia, but instead, just by themselves, separately. Maybe you could do something similar to the Four Nations where, there's more than enough Russian talent in the NHL to do something like that. If you don't want to have them play under the Russian flag, that's fine. Just do something else. But that would definitely be exciting. So to bring this all back to the Florida Panthers, they had the most players competing in this compared to any other of the 32 teams in the NHL. Every single team had at least one Panther in it. Of course, you had Finland, led by Alexander Barkov. You had Canada, which featured both Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, and then Team USA with Matthew Tkachuk. You have Finland with, I believe, Forsling, and I believe I'm missing someone else. But there were Panthers all around, and I think all of them did excellent, and they made the Panthers proud.
Yeah, that was what was also nice about this, just, coming from the Panthers, was that it kind of felt like you were going to win regardless. Obviously,
Right.
I was rooting for Team USA, but you had both of the Sams on the Canadian team, so it was still nice. You have Finland, who had Anton Lundell, Alexander Barkov, Nico Mikkola, and then you had Gustav Forsling on the Swedish team. So it just really felt like you couldn't lose, because with competitions like this, you're always rooting for your country, and if your country doesn't win, you're rooting for your guys. And our guys were scattered everywhere.
Yeah, without a doubt. As far as how they could maybe improve on this the next time they do it, I think you could have more venues scattered around. Montreal and Boston, I think, were good locations to start off, but definitely you can put in other cities in Canada and the US, maybe even internationally in some of these other nations as well. Definitely places like New York, Toronto, maybe even down here in South Florida. Maybe if the championship team could maybe host a part of the Four Nations Faceoff, that could all work as well. So that's all well and good. There was one problem, however, with the Four Nations Faceoff that is affecting the Florida Panthers specifically, and it was the injury to Matthew Tkachuk. I believe it was in the first game against Canada where he suffered it. Didn't play in the loss against Sweden, and of course I think he played a little bit in the finale, but didn't play that much. And this is a gripe I have with the NHL as well, Alex. Of all the sports leagues, they are always the most vague with what the hell is going on with the player's injury and how long they're going to be out for. With the NFL, NBA, you'll know. they'll be out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They'll be put on the IR. They're out for 4 weeks. We don't know what's going on with Tkachuk. All we know is that it's listed as a groin injury, and he did not play. He has not played in the last few games, and we don't know when he's going to play again. It's very frustrating, and it's disappointing that you had a player with as much hype as Tkachuk entering the Four Nations. He and Brady Tkachuk did some amazing things together as a team, but now we have to go back to the regular season and miss one of our best players on the roster.
Yeah, it really stinks. Paul Maurice said yesterday that he was, quote, or that he was going to be out in, quote, the near term. He said that he would be out through the weekend at least, and the weekend includes. I don't have it up. The weekend includes Calgary coming into town.
Right.
I doubt that we'll see him anytime soon. He did say that we will see him again before the season ends. So I'm hoping that that's correct. The Panthers specifically, hockey is very vague when it comes to their injuries, but the Panthers in particular, even by hockey standards, can be very, very tight-lipped. Not a single reporter from the Panthers has, been able to report anything yet, and it's through no fault of their own. It's just that's how the Panthers are. There's no leaks coming out of that building.
Yeah.
Everything that we do know is stuff that Paul Maurice himself has said at the podium at practice. So that's all we got. Even the national reporters really don't know much, because there was that one reporter who said that Matt Tkachuk's season was over, and now here comes Paul Maurice saying, we'll see him before the season's over. So we really don't know.
Groin injuries are really bad. I've never had one. I'm going to assume you've never had one, Alex, but I have heard some terrible things about the slow healing process that happens down there. And if that's the case, you're looking at quite a few weeks. Hopefully, we can get Tkachuk back sooner than later. Thankfully, Florida is in a position where they haven't clinched a playoff spot. I don't know how close they are to clinching a playoff spot at this very moment, but they're in a case where, in all likelihood, with or without Tkachuk, they're getting into the postseason. It's just a matter of, okay, are they going to win the Atlantic? Are they going to win the East? Are they going to get the President's Trophy? The last two seem maybe a little, I don't know, maybe they can end up winning the East, but as far as President's Trophy and whatnot, there are some other teams out there. Both you have Las Vegas, you have Washington kind of tearing it up in the regular season as well. But thankfully, we're in a spot where we want Matthew Tkachuk, but the regular season at least is not going to be destroyed because he's not there, and that just kind of goes to show the amazing depth that this team has and the lines that Paul Maurice has built, where they can still handle missing a guy like Tkachuk.
Yeah, and it certainly helps that some of their goal scorers are getting hot again. Sam Bennett is scoring, Carter Verhaeghe is scoring. They're going to miss Matt Tkachuk, of course, but the guys are able to handle it so far, and they have put themselves in a good position. You really had it right on the nose when you said the depth here is one of those things where it really doesn't concern me. Of course, if they have to miss him in the playoffs, that really sucks, because not only is he really good, but also his play style specifically is part of what got Florida over the hump in the playoffs.
Yeah, without a doubt. So that's pretty much where they stand there. Aside from Tkachuk, the rest of the team is, for the most part, pretty healthy. They have played a couple of games since the All-Star break, being a loss to Seattle, 2-1 at home, a win over at the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, 4-1 over the Predators, and then last night defeating the Edmonton Oilers in that Stanley Cup Final rematch, 4-3. They're going to take on the Calgary Flames, like you said, tomorrow at 3, also here in Sunrise. So there's been 3 games played, and we already have kind of an idea of what this Panthers team can look like without Tkachuk. But for the remainder of this regular season, let's say we have the worst news possible that Tkachuk is going to be out for the remainder of the regular season. Who do you see having to lift their shoulders the most to try to take over Tkachuk's spot?
I think I don't know specifically about taking over Tkachuk's spot, but I think that in terms of production, I'm excited to see what Mackie Samoskevich can do.
Yes.
He's been scoring and facilitating very well in the second half of the season. He's been great. Sam Bennett is heating up again. He looked really good before the Four Nations, and then at the Four Nations, he looked terrific. Different positions, of course, so I'm not saying that he's taken Tkachuk's spot or anything, but just in terms of productivity from the forwards, I'm really excited for those two guys. Evan Rodriguez has been very good this year. I'm excited to see what he does on the second line. It seems like he's been on the second line since they got back from the tournament, and of course spend time there before the tournament as well. Just opening up for guys like that.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then they even called up from the Charlotte Checkers, their minor league system, and a now Panthers legend, Justin Sourdif, I believe that's how you say it, came into the roster for the Nashville game, ended up scoring the game winner, the game-sealing goal, and then was recalled back, was loaned back. He'll go down as a Panthers legend for sure, just for that alone. But yeah, we're going to be fine defensively. I think losing Tkachuk is not going to impact this team that much on defense specifically. You still have all your guys like Barkov, Forsling, Bennett. They're still there and they're still doing great offensively. I know he didn't score a goal in the game against Edmonton, but I was really impressed by what Evan Rodriguez was able to do with how he gave Skinner hell that whole game. And while he didn't end up getting a goal, I don't think he even got a point either. He didn't get an assist either. He still was on Edmonton's ass all game long. So I guess all of this is to say that it sucks that Tkachuk's not going to be playing, but Florida, like I said, has put themselves in a great spot where even if they drop a couple of games, which I don't even expect them to, like to get in a slump at this point, as long as you can get into the postseason with Tkachuk back and with everyone else still attached to this team, that there's nothing saying that this Panthers team can't make another deep run to the Stanley Cup Final.
Exactly.
That brings us to last night's game to talk a bit more about it. And Alex, that was the most playoff-esque hockey we've seen in the regular season thus far, in my opinion, for this Panthers team. That Stanley Cup Final rematch between the Panthers and the Oilers. The Florida fans got into it. They showed that one guy. They showed that one fan with the sign over his head saying, "Hey, McDavid, you got one of these?" And it points, and it's like pointing to his hand, and he's got a ring on it. So the fans were into it. I know they kept showing the banner on the broadcast all night long. As soon as the game ended, too, they kept pointing to the banner, which is awesome. It's a great looking banner. But no, that was definitely. It felt like we were watching Game 8 or Game 9 of the Stanley Cup Final between these two teams. It was. It definitely had that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. It was. There was a sequence in, I believe, the second period where the puck was just going back and forth the whole time, and a couple of close calls on both ends, and then I think it was Leon Draisaitl scored.
Yes.
To tie the game, but even though that particular sequence didn't end the way the Florida wanted it to, like that was just a microcosm of how exciting this game was. Love seeing Carter Verhaeghe get on the score sheet. Love seeing Nate Schmidt get on the score sheet. It was just a terrific game. And then what was interesting was that Paul Maurice said after the game that he didn't even like the way that they played outside of the last 8 minutes, which, just to show you how far they've come, where they're winning 4-3 against a very good hockey team, a team that they beat in the Stanley Cup last year. And the coach says, I still didn't really like our play.
Yeah. That stretch came off the tip in from Lundell. I believe it was with his skate. And then for the next few minutes afterwards, that was the loudest the crowd was at that point after the Lundell goal, where it was just a back and forth between good shots on Skinner and then the Oilers getting good shots on Bobrovsky, but Bob making those saves. The crowd was into it. It really felt like we were back in the postseason. And then, like you said, Draisaitl gets his, but definitely a great performance. And then, again, you have to take into account that the Panthers were obviously not at full strength. They're offensively, they were as deadly a team as we've seen, even without Matthew Tkachuk that was one of the better offensive performances we've seen from the Panthers this season without number 19.
Yeah, it was terrific. It does feel like the forwards are, I don't even want to say peaking because I don't even think this is the best that they can play, but they're definitely pulling out of their slump at the right time. And it's been happening for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Lundell gets 2 assists and a goal. It's a point hat trick for him. That line with Lundell and Rodriguez was something scary. It was something fierce to watch, and I loved every second of it. Reinhart gets an assist on that game. Carter Verhaeghe. So Carter Verhaeghe could have been on hat trick alert, but the last 3 games, the loss to Seattle, the win over Nashville, and now this, a goal has been taken back every single game, and it's so unbelievably frustrating. Ironically, this was the most justifiable, challenge and goal taken back, as I think it was Barkov was clearly offsides there, but the 2 goals prior were both because of deemed goaltender interference, and everyone talks about this, and I think we both agree on it. Do we really even know what goaltender interference is anymore?
No, I think there's certain obvious ones, and then I think there's ones where, they just kind of flip a coin because it's like a balk in baseball and it's like a catch in football.
I can't remember who was the Panther that got his goal taken away in the Seattle game. Let me do a quick thing here and do a bit of research if I can find it. But that was the most where it was like, what the hell? Because, again, I can't remember the player, but he was quite literally pushed into the crease. And while he did stay there, it didn't look like he had directly made contact with Seattle's goalie. And that's additionally frustrating because after the few minutes that the refs took a look at it, they said that he went into the crease on his own, which is clearly, replay can tell you, that was not the case at all.
Yeah, that was one of those, not in terms of game situation, because it's just a game in the middle of February and, whatever. But in terms of the play itself, it was one of the most egregious missed calls I've seen in goaltender interference because it was Evan Rodriguez who got pushed in by former teammate Josh Mahura. Mm-hmm. And, he got pushed into the goalie, pretty obviously, too. It's not like he kind of got pushed and then Rodriguez kind of took himself into the crease a little bit. No, Josh Mahura pushed him and continued pushing him until he was in the crease. It was very strange, and I have no idea what their logic was behind that.
If you want to say, okay, after he got into the crease, he stuck around there too long. Okay, I can kind of see that, but he didn't make contact with the goalie, and the fact that they said that just really pissed me off more than anything. That they said that specifically, that he went in there on his own, which is the most why do we even have replay if they're just going to deny that? But maybe it was Toronto making sure that the Maple Leafs stay in the battle for first place in the Atlantic. I digress. It was not a great game against Seattle, but they came out, played good against Nashville, and I guess that was just a warm-up for how good they were going to play against Edmonton. They have 8 goals in 2 games. That's pretty great, both of which without, Matthew Tkachuk. So we at this point, we have passed the halfway point of the season, I believe. Taking a look at where the Panthers stand right now, stat-wise, I just realized I haven't been putting up my banner here. There we go. Sam Reinhart is doing Sam Reinhart things, Alex. 64 points, 31 goals. Barkov leads the team in assists with 40. AJ Greer is spending the most time in the box, which is interesting. And then goaltending-wise, Bobrovsky has played pretty well so far this season. A 2.6 in goals against average. I believe it's a 902 save percentage. He's looking sharp most nights he is. And offensively, like I said, this team is looking great even without Matthew. So, who would you say has surprised you the most with how well they've done this season?
I don't know about surprised, but impressed has been Spencer Knight. Mm-hmm. Spencer Knight, out of all goaltenders that have played at least 20 games, there's There's 50 of them. He is number 7 in terms of goals allowed per game. He's allowing, I just have the number here. He's allowing 2.4 goals a game. He's just half a goal behind Connor Hellebuck. He's not going to catch up to that. Connor Hellebuck is on a insane tear this season and seasons past. But Spencer Knight has been very good. I'm very comfortable with him being the starting goaltender and waiting whenever Bobrovsky either retires or goes somewhere else. I'm also impressed with what Matthew Samoskevich has been able to do. I knew that he would be good. I knew that he would be good because earlier this year he kept getting open looks. He was just missing the net. And I think that getting open looks is harder than hitting the net when you've been playing hockey your whole life. Like, I didn't think that Samoskevich just forgot how to hit the net. When you come to the NHL, the biggest adjustment is, are you strong enough, fast enough, and smart enough to get open space? And he was. And so I knew eventually he was going to be able to land those pucks in the back of the net. Because, like I said, he didn't just forget how to shoot. So once he got that into the equation, he's been great.
Yeah. Spencer Knight, there was a lot of concern when they lost Stolars that, okay, who's going to take over the backup role and can he be reliable if he were to have to play in the big games such as even the postseason? People doubted Spencer Knight when the season began, thinking like, okay, can he be that guy as the backup role? But so far this season, the answer has been a resounding yes, I believe. Sam Reinhart, Barkov are, again, there's not a whole lot to talk about them because they've been as consistent as they were last year, being a championship caliber team. It's kind of what you would expect at this point. And the fact that they're doing so well and they're locked under these big year contracts with the salary cap being increased for the next few years. Again, a Bill Zito masterclass, Alex, where now you have even more money to spend on top talent, either now before the trade deadline closes really soon. I think it's on March the 7th, or in the incoming offseason where the Panthers can sign basically whoever they want at this point.
Yeah, it certainly opens things up because they're going to have to try to re-sign Aaron Ekblad and Sam Bennett, and now suddenly they have more money than what we originally thought they were going to have to sign both of them. And just doing some very, just doing some very elementary projections as to what I think they will both get in the market. I think that the Panthers can afford both.
Yeah.
And I think that they already had a bright future. Now that even more money is being added, I think the future is even brighter. Now, the caveat, of course, is other teams also get more money to spend. So we'll see if another team wants to pay even more for Ekblad or Bennett. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Ekblad and Bennett are Panthers lifers. They're one of those guys where I could not imagine them rocking another color jersey at this point in their careers. But yeah, you'll never see what happens. Obviously, Florida was hit with the championship tax this offseason with guys like Montour heading out, which definitely is unfortunate, but it's something you just have to live with and find answers for. And so far, Florida, I think, has done that with the players they've already brought in, but they could always use someone else, Alex. You know, they could always get more talent through the trade before the trade deadline hits, which, I checked, is on March the 7th, just like they did last year with Tarasenko. And defensively, he made a pretty good impact for Florida in the postseason. We've already seen a couple of big trades in the NHL, Alex. You, of course, have Mikko Rantanen going to Carolina, Taylor Hall as well going to Carolina, Jack Drury going to Colorado as part of that crazy deal that happened between Carolina, Colorado, and Chicago. With all that said, who do you think are some of the best players on the market still that fit with Florida's scheme and could make an impact almost immediately?
Well, I think they need someone who is an offensive defenseman. Off the top of my head, I don't know if I have any names off the top of my head, but they need an offensive defenseman. I think that, first of all, just in terms of defense, I think that's been the thing that's been holding them back a little bit this year, just because I know that there's been a slump in scoring, but also those are from guys that have very good track records. I do want them to add a defenseman, and I think part of why the offense took a little bit of a dip in the middle of the year is because all of the offense is coming from the forwards.
Yeah.
So just someone who is a good right-hand shot defenseman, good on the offense, can take a little bit of the pressure off of the forwards to score some goals.
There have already been a lot of big moves this offseason in the NHL. You have Cody Ceci joining Dallas from San Jose, and then you have Marcus Pettersson being acquired by Vancouver. Definitely. I'm not saying that I don't believe this Panthers team can make it to the Stanley Cup Final with their roster they have specifically. Like, I think they can. They still can go all the way with what they have now. But definitely, I don't think it would hurt to just take a look around and see what's available. And I guarantee you that's what Bill Zito is doing right now. I wouldn't be shocked if, hey, maybe he got some of their Panthers to talk to some players in the Four Nations. You know, be like, hey, you know, what did Buffalo's GM says that we have that they don't? Palm trees and no state tax. I mean, hey, you gotta let them know, right? I'm sure they did that. They probably wouldn't tell you, but I would guarantee you they did do that. So
Absolutely.
Looking around the NHL, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alex. What were you saying, Alex? Let me pull up something here in the meantime, by the way. So let's take a look around the NHL, Alex. Standings wise, there's still a long way to go before the playoffs were to begin. However, again, Florida's competing for a first place in the Atlantic. You have Toronto and Tampa Bay a little bit behind them. Florida only has a 1-point lead in front of Toronto. Toronto has Austin Matthews, which I kind of like. I think he's a cool player, but he was supposed to be on Connor McDavid when he scored that game winner in overtime in the Four Nations. So, I mean, like McDavid kind of falling in the clutch again. We've seen it time and time before. Anyway, I don't mean to rain on his parade, but looking around the NHL in the East specifically, what teams really scare you at this point that Florida will probably have to take on in the postseason anyway? What team gives you the heebie-jeebies the most? I'm looking at Washington and see what they're doing with Ovechkin going for the Great One's all-time goals record. I definitely don't want to play him in the postseason, but I think that's probably what's going to happen for Florida anyway.
Yeah, Washington has been surprising this year. I'm really shocked that Ovechkin's even getting close to that goal record because I kind of thought that he had sputtered out, which, you know, fairness to him, he's getting up there in age. But I'm also surprised just how good Washington.
Oh, we're back. Hey, Alex, you're back. You were just talking about Washington.
Okay.
Well, continue your point, if you could, Alex, about Ovechkin and how well they're doing this season.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how good Ovechkin has been and the fact that he's even gotten close to getting that goal record just because, you know, I felt like age was catching up to him a lot. I felt like age was catching up to him, and I'm surprised that Washington as a team is doing as well as they're doing. So I just don't really know what to expect. I know that when they went up to D.C. a couple weeks ago, they sort of struggled against Washington, and it sort of exposed a couple of holes that the Panthers might have. So I certainly hope that that's one of those things that stays in the regular season. This is just one. I feel like the NHL always has one or two regular season darlings each year, and then they fall apart in the playoffs. I'm hoping that that's what it is this year for Washington.
Meanwhile, out in the West, you have Winnipeg, who has the best goal differential in the NHL with a plus of 72. They've given up the least amount of goals this season. They're kind of just, I don't want to say cruising by, but the difference between them and the 2 spot in the Central being Dallas is 11 points. It looks like it could be Winnipeg's conference to lose when we get into the postseason, but you have a deadly team like Vegas, and who knows if they could with some injuries and whatnot, they can pull some salary cap shenanigans like they've done so in the past. But I think it would be fun. I think actually, Alex, it would be fun to play Edmonton again in the final. But it looks like Winnipeg looks like the most complete team over there in the West.
Yeah, Winnipeg has really brought it together. I feel like they're a team that always has had the pieces, and now they are actually putting it all together, and they've been sustaining it. They were pretty good last year as well, but this year they're even better. And Connor Hellebuck, like I mentioned earlier in the show, he's giving up pretty much just 2 goals a game. It's 2.02. So the fact that they also have the goalie to carry them through the playoffs, like that is pretty scary.
Yeah. So let's take a look at Florida's schedule up ahead just to see what games are really catching our eye. Let me go ahead and share my screen to show you guys. Let's head over to ESPN. Here we go. So we've seen a lot of hockey thus far. The next up for the Panthers is they're going to be finishing up a 5-game homestand that started with the Edmonton game against Tampa, Columbus, and Buffalo. Obviously, 2 very solid teams in Tampa and Columbus. Buffalo is Buffalo. Then you have a daunting 6-game road trip that starts off against Boston and Toronto. Definitely a deadly 1-2 there. There is a lot of hockey still to be played. You have like 2 months of hockey, or actually not even, like more than 1.5, 1 3/4 before it's time to get into the postseason. But looking all around here, Alex, there are definitely a lot of matchups where it could go either way. But I think a big trait of this Panthers team is that when they take on these playoff caliber teams, they give 110% game in and game out. We saw that against Edmonton, even without Matthew Tkachuk, and maybe there were some thoughts that, okay, maybe they'll just kind of hold back, pull their punches a little. No, they gave Edmonton hell. I think they're going to do the same against a lot of these teams. I'm really excited to see the Boston matchup on the 11th, followed by that Toronto matchup, just to see where the Panthers are against 2 teams that they might have to play in the post. Actually, not even Boston. We don't know about them, but Toronto specifically. That could be, it's a battle for the Atlantic.
Yeah, you can't really take too much from these regular season games just because, as we saw last year, or was it the year before, where the Panthers got swept in the season series against Boston and wound up just beating Boston anyway. So you can't take too much from it because the play style just changes so much when we get to the playoffs. But it will be fun just to see how they match up because they are going to get some tests this month. They're going to get Tampa. They're going to go on the road to Boston and Toronto. They're going to go on the road to Washington. It's going to be a very fun month where you're going to get some previews against some of these teams that I'm sure they're going to play at some point.
They host Utah on the 28th. I think Utah, by the way, has sort of announced the finalists for their new name, and among them is Mammoth, which I think is ending up being or is it Yeti? No, Yeti was disallowed because of the Yeti cooler brand saying no, you can't use that. Now I think it's Mammoth, Outlaws, or they stay as Hockey Club. Don't be known as the Hockey Club. That's stupid. I mean, just go with either Mammoth or Outlaws. I think Mammoth is cool. You can do some cool things with the logo there. Outlaws is also kind of neat. I think there's the problem there. There's a lacrosse team in Colorado called the Outlaws, so that could be a problem there. But I'd say Mammoth is probably the runaway for Utah.
Yeah, I'm really sad they can't use Yeti because I really like that one. That was at the top of my list.
It's a unique name, and it rolls off the tongue. Utah Yeti. It just kind of rolls off there. All right, we'll close up shop here. By the way, I do have one more thing to show you. Both Alex, I don't know if you've seen this already, Alex, but someone on the Panthers subreddit dropped a look at the new scoreboard that's going to be built at the Amerant Bank Arena. Now, take this with a grain of salt because the person that posted this in the Panthers subreddit has not actually given a source of where he got this from, but it looks pretty like it looks like those average concepts for what these can look like. And I think this is going to get done in the offseason, and I think it's going to be ready for next season, maybe the year after. I think it's going to be ready for next season. But judging by this scoreboard, I mean, the actual scoreboard itself looks like a little bit taller. I'm assuming it's going to have even better resolution. But the eye-catching thing is the bit up top, the little halo ring up top that I guess is going to just show statistics and other, important information. Alex, I didn't really have a problem with the Amerant Bank Arena scoreboard as like right now, at least from where we stand over at the press box. It's always kind of visible. Like it looks fine, but I like this. I like the look of this new scoreboard, and that ring looks like it's going to be pretty dang useful.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. I think a Halo screen is a pretty cool thing. I didn't have a problem with the scoreboard either right now.
Yeah.
But, they got the money for it. It's not my money.
Yeah, that's cool. There was no problem, I thought, with the scoreboard, but this looks cool. It seems like every new arena has like a ring, like a Halo ring system now. You have that new arena over at Inglewood where the Clippers play with that giant ring system. I think even the Miami Heat's new scoreboard at the Kaseya Center has a ring system kind of similar to this. But I haven't been out to a Heat game because, the interest there is not, hate to say it, not super high. But this looks cool. So, all right, Alex, we'll end it there. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? I know they're taking on Calgary. It would have been cool. It's always cool to see Tkachuk play against his former team, but that's not going to happen. Still, what are your expectations for that game?
I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited to see Ryan Lomberg in the building again.
Yeah.
I loved what he said yesterday on the broadcast when they were playing Tampa. He said, I like the palm trees down here, but I still bleep and hate these guys. So he's still a Panther at heart. And so I'm very excited for him to be back in the building and for him to get his tribute video.
Lomberg was one of my favorite players. I hope that when he finally retires, he can at least sign, one of those contracts to retire as a Panther. I'd like to see that happen just because, he was one of my favorites. He was a big part of that championship run. So, Alex, I know you're going to be balancing Panthers coverage with Marlins coverage over in Jupiter, and obviously when this season starts, I think it's against Pittsburgh at Lone Depot Park. I know Dan the Man Marino is going to be throwing out the first pitch. Quick thoughts on the state of the Miami Marlins baseball club.
Oh, they're doing great. The young guys are excited to be there. I'm getting 2006 Marlins vibes from this team, where they are very young and cheap and inexperienced, but they might surprise people and win, 75, 80 games. And I think it'll lead to subsequent seasons in which they add on to that win total. There's storylines there. There's fun guys. It's not a bunch of lame ducks, where it's a bunch of guys that are old on expiring deals that are just retiring in Miami. Like, they're young, hungry guys, and there will be moments this year. There will be fun moments this year, but also a lot of losing.
And then you have your stars like Sandy. Hopefully he can go for another Cy Young. You have a great storyline, like you said, with Griffin Conine, the son of Mr. Marlin. What can he do with this organization? You had that new Hall of Fame for the Marlins, which I think is really, really cool. I can't wait until they add FIU and Marlins legend Lowell. Or is Lowell and he wasn't already there, right? No, the four guys, there were two managers and two players. I don't think Lowell was part of it, right?
It was Jim Leland, Jack McKeon, Jeff Conine, and I believe it was Mike Lowell. I believe.
If Lowell's not already there, I think he should be the next man up. If he's not already there.
No, sorry, it was Luis Castillo.
There, okay. Well, Castillo deserves it too, but Lowell definitely should be next. FIU legend, Marlins legend. I just wanted to throw FIU somewhere in there. I just need to throw FIU in there because we weren't talking about the FIU Miami baseball game coming up soon at Lone Depot. I guess there was a Panthers connection. The Panthers will be playing at Lone Depot next year. So there you go. I just need to shoehorn my way in there. Alrighty, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Go watch some hockey tomorrow as the Panthers take on the Calgary Flames. I think, what was it, puck drop 7 o'clock, I think, Alex? So go watch some hockey. Even without Tkachuk, this team is really good. And until next time, let's go home!